You know, I always knew I had my two great reading loves, sci-fi and fantasy. But what if there's a third that I'm just now discovering? Hey everyone, welcome back to Andrew's Wizardly Reads, and as always guys, we are here to talk about some fantastic books. But before we get into that, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel as we are trying to hit 5,000 subscribers by the end of 2023. And guys, today's video is kind of based off of like how booktube has affected me as a whole, how it has introduced me into a new favorite subgenre, and what that favorite subgenre is, some favorites in there, some reasons why I like it, just this general discussion type of video. You know these before, you've seen these before, and without really any much further ado, let's jump right on into this with what this video is about. And basically, this is about me falling in love with historical fiction. And growing up for me, like, it was always fantasy, and then like I hit my teen years and I was like, you know what, sci-fi's pretty cool too. I fell in love with Stargate and Star Trek and Star Wars and all that stuff, and I was like, yeah, this stuff is really cool. But there was always like something in my brain that told me that historical fiction wasn't for me. It was for old people. It was for people who didn't like fantasy. And that is, I don't know where that mindset came from, because it's just not true. It's just simply not true. It's a bunch of baloney. And I don't know where I got this thought process that historical fiction was something undesirable, because I gotta tell you, since within the last year, really diving into like listening to my friends and their recommendations and like trying to grow as a reader and expand my tastes and my TBR, I've discovered a huge love for historical fiction, whether that be Asian, colonial America, Native American, Egyptian, Greek and Roman, just so much great historical fiction is out there, and I'm just now at the age of 32 getting into it. And that makes me kind of sad, but also it excites me at the same time, because now that I'm reading these, I'm really enjoying it. Recently, I have started James Clavell's Shogun. This is a classic from the 50s, and this is basically set in 1599 Japan. And what I love specifically about Shogun, is I've always thought that I knew a fair bit of like Asian and Japanese history. You know, I'm married into an Asian family. I've been to Taiwan. I've been to China. I grew up like really loving Japanese lore. I thought I knew some stuff. And then I start reading Shogun, and I come to find out that like the Portuguese have this huge history with the Japanese that I never knew about. My family's from Portugal. Well, not exactly from Portugal. My grandfather's family is from the Azores Islands, which is off of the coast of Portugal. That's neither here nor there. But, like, to find that out, like, I can have that little tie of family history to a book, and then it just enriches the story for me. And plus, I mean, it's samurai, it's a British guy in feudal Japan. What's not to love there? So, I mean, just discovering this book has been really, really satisfying, and learning how, like, very much fish out of water. Like, it's one of the best fish out of water tales I've ever read. When it comes to, you know, colonial America, we've got Speaks the Nightbird by Robert McCammon. And let me tell you what, like, I always thought, like, when you say witch trial, you immediately think of Salem, and the witch trials that happened there. And, you know, the atrocities and everything surrounding it. But, like, to watch it on page is, like, really, like, eye-opening. Like, the whole time I'm sitting back going, like, oh, these people have no interest in the truth. Only Matthew in this story is interested in the truth. Everybody else is just hardcore leaning on their superstitions and things of that nature. And it really kind of goes to show how far we have come in terms of just, like, believing ludicrous stuff and, like, needing some sort of empirical truth. And it's just like, you know, the truth will win out. And that is a great message that comes through here. Also, just to keep digging until you find the truth. And then, of course, I've got to dig. I've got everything out of order because I'm still fairly early on in my historical fiction kind of journey. A great historical fantasy one that I don't own yet, that kind of was my gateway into this great new subgenre of fiction. Well, I shouldn't say subgenre. I should say genre of fiction. Is the Troy trilogy by David Gemmell, and specifically it's a retelling of the Troy conflict from David Gemmell's point of view. And I really, really enjoyed this experience. It takes like Hector, and it takes Odysseus, and just all of these characters that you know and love, and like Achilles and all of them, and casts them in new light. And then, like, you really get in on, like, the political intrigue and some of the battles and things, you know, may not have happened as the way that they've been retold in these myths and legends that have been passed down for over 1,000 years. And instead, it makes it a little bit more realistic and a little bit more accessible. And the reason I say that this one has historical fantasy is it's got, like, a prophecy god's undertone. That, you know, is it real? Is it not real? Possibly, maybe, we don't know, but it's done in such a way that it was just kind of like this perfect gateway, just opening the door and introducing me to all of these great new series. Like, I'm currently collecting the Asian Saga by James Clavell. I actually have, except for the latest released, have all of the Matthew Corbett books. I've already read the second Matthew Corbett book, which takes place in New York. It's right here, Queen of Bedlam. This one takes place in New York 3 years after the end of Speaks the Nightbird, and it just takes on this whole new spin on when, like, early New York was, and what people thought New York could be, and what life in early New York was like. And it's just very interesting, because it's not how I would have pictured it at all. Because, you know, when you're sitting in history class in, like, high school or something, it's something incredibly boring. And then, like, from there, of course, we got to talk some Arthurian historical fiction by Bernard Cornwell. Now, I've actually got 3 other Bernard Cornwell books to show you, because I've been buying a lot of Bernard Cornwell ever since reading the Warlord Chronicles. Here we get to go back to Arthurian times, and we do a historical fiction take on it. Instead of Merlin being a wizard, he becomes a druid, and all of a sudden kind of loses this fantastical element and becomes much more grounded, and in a way, more accessible, more relatable. And that's something that I love that these authors are doing, like Bernard Cornwell, is making something like this incredibly relatable. To have, like, Merlin be this druid who's just kind of madcap and believes in his power and things of that nature, and it might be a little off his rocker. It's fantastic, and I can't help but love reading when Merlin's on the page, or love reading the trials and the burden of authority that Arthur has on his shoulders. Meanwhile, Durful is trying to be a good liegeman. He's trying to be a good father. He's trying to be a good warrior, a good soldier. He's trying to keep to his oaths. He's trying to be a good man in evil times. And that's something that is just easy. I don't know if it's easier to portray in historical fiction, but I mean, it helps when you don't have to craft this entire magic system. You don't have to craft nations. I mean, you do have to do research, and you have to... I mean, Saint Durful Cadern was a real person, which I didn't even realize until I was 3 books in. I just assumed that the fiction part was being leaned into quite heavily. No, there are a lot of real people who appear within the Winter King. Now, you can argue whether or not Arthur was a real person or not. I'm not up onto the latest Arthurian lore. When I was 10 years ago, people thought he might be like some sort of Viking king or Viking ruler. I don't know. That's not what we're here to talk about. But it's just like, these stories are so accessible, and you can go on great, great adventures without having to explore a whole new culture. Or, well, I'm going to walk that back. You can go on these great adventures while exploring new cultures that don't necessarily have to be 100% made up. Like, you can do a little bit of research, you can infer some things, but I mean, really, we are exploring the history of humankind while having great adventures, still epic battles that you still find in fantasy, and exploring ideas that are, you know, presented in both fantasy and sci-fi, just in a different kind of format. So I love that there. And then, of course, because like I said, I'm still new to this, I've got a whole bunch of historical fiction that I've just been buying up. Digitally, I have got Matthew Harfree's Bernicia Chronicles. There we go. I'll get it out there. Don't you worry. I've got a whole bunch of Bernard Cornwell, like I've got, of course, his Saxon stuff. This is Viking retellings. Uhtred, Son of Uhtred is what I've heard bandied around, and there's a Netflix adaptation because the stupid fake sticker on the book is going to let you know that there's a Netflix adaptation. Anyway, it's not what we're here to talk about. It's not what we're here to talk about, but I get to explore what it might have been like in, Viking and in Viking eras. I can do more Arthurian stuff with Bernard Cornwell's Grail Quest. If I want to know what Napoleonic French Revolution was like, I can read the Sharp books and experience warfare that way. If I want to, go back onto the frontier and see what it's like to be a cowboy, I can read Lonesome Dove by Larry McMurtry. If I want to go back into ancient France and do the Chivalry series, we've got The Ill-Made Knight, which I'm reading this month. This is going to be my next historical fiction read by Christian Cameron. If I want to go back to, I think, it's either the 14 or the 1600s, and be a monk and an abbot, we can do The Pillars of Earth by Ken Follett, Queensbridge. If I want to go to China during the Three Kingdoms Chronicles, we can do Yellow Sky Revolt by Baptiste Pisson-Wu. And if I want to go explore what it was like during the rise of Julius Caesar, I can do the Emperor series by Con Eagledon. These are all great series that have just been recommended to me by people on the platform. I want to end up trying the Kubla Khan series that Con Eagledon wrote. I want to try the Cicero series that is more, I believe, Roman, by Thomas. Oh, I forgot the author's name. I'll put it right there. Ching! It's right there. I want to read this one. It's a trilogy of books that has been getting some traction here on my little corner of booktube here lately. These are just series that I am just dying to try. They are calling my name, and it's really heartwarming because my entire life, all 25 to 26 years of reading experience has all been fantasy and sci-fi until last year. And that is just why I'm so excited to expand into historical fiction. Booktube has changed my mind. It has introduced me into a new love. And if you are purely a fantasy reader, please check out some of these books that I held up. They might be the perfect gateway into unlocking historical fiction for you like it was for me. I am so excited to continue to read these series and these adventures, and to learn, even if it's fiction, I can still learn about history through fictional adventures. There are kernels, there are grains, there are truths to be held within these stories. Because like I said, these authors had to do some sort of research in order to get these stories written in the way that they have been written. That said, guys, I'm really here to just gush about my newfound love of historical fiction to you. Let me know in the comments down below how you feel about historical fiction. And as always, guys, till next time, peace out, stay magical, bye. And as always, I want to give a huge thank you to my patrons.